The prophet Daniel was told at the end of the time that he received prophecies that his prophecies would be sealed and closed until the time of the end. Now is the time of the end, and now would be a good time for us to open our Bibles and see what the Bible has to say about the time of the end. This presentation is going to be about the false prophet. There is not a lot written about the false prophet in the scriptures, but we do find some very descriptive language in Revelation, and we can make connections with other prophecies in the Old Testament to find out who the false prophet will be when he comes. And he becomes in league with the Antichrist, and the Antichrist, of course, is seen in power during the last 7 years of this age. We find the most written about the false prophet in the book of Revelation, and every place we see the false prophet, we see that the false prophet is in league with the Antichrist when he comes to power. Here's what we find written in Revelation 13 about the rise of this other beast, which is the false prophet. He exercised all the authority of the first beast, Antichrist. He performed miraculous signs and deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He forced everyone to receive a mark and to worship the image of the beast. We always find in Revelation the two linked together. And here we find that this is a description during the last 3.5 years of the age. Here in Revelation 16, once again we find the false prophet and the Antichrist in league. However, at this particular time, the bowls of God's wrath are being poured out on the earth, which I believe is during the time of the day of the Lord, which is Christ's return. So this could be after the Great Tribulation, after Christ's return. It says that the bowl is poured out on the river Euphrates to prepare the way for the kings of the east, so that they can come against Israel. They can be gathered at Armageddon for the battle in Jerusalem. The evil spirits came out of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet to call these kings of the nations together for this final battle. In Revelation 19, we see more description of this time, this collaboration between the false prophet and the Antichrist, and we're told that the beast, Antichrist, the kings, and their armies will be gathered together at Armageddon to make war against the rider on the horse and his army, which is Christ. But the beast was captured, and the false prophet, who had performed the miraculous signs, of course we know on behalf of the Antichrist. The two, the false prophet and the Antichrist, were thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. This is when the two are captured, their bodies are destroyed, and they're thrown into the lake of burning fire. These are the first two that go into the lake of burning fire, right at the time of their destruction after Christ has returned and he defeats them. We're going to see more about this destruction of the false prophet and the Antichrist, which will help determine who the false prophet is. So we know when Christ returns and the final battle ensues against the kings of the earth, the Antichrist, that the Antichrist and the false prophet are captured, destroyed, and thrown into the lake of fire. Here in one of Daniel's prophecies, we see this picture described this way. I continued to watch because of the boastful words that the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast, this is Antichrist, was slain and his body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. Again, a different picture of the same thing by Daniel. This case, the Antichrist is destroyed at the time of the final battle against Christ by the Antichrist and the nations of the earth. From the Old Testament prophet Hosea, we see an interesting statement. When that day dawns, now this would be the day of the Lord, when Christ comes. When that day dawns, the king of Israel will be completely destroyed. Well, the king of Israel is not the Antichrist. The Antichrist makes a peace with Israel, but he doesn't do it as the king of Israel. He's in league, perhaps, with the king of Israel. But when the day of the Lord comes, the king of Israel will be completely destroyed. Well, the other one that is destroyed is the false prophet, and this would be the false Messiah. Here in the Gospel of John, Christ tells us about this false Messiah that will come. He says, "I have come in my Father's name, and you do not accept me. But if someone else comes in his own name, you will accept him." They didn't accept Christ as the Messiah, but he says another will come, and him they will accept. The Messiah is the king of Israel, and we're told that the king of Israel is destroyed when Christ returns. This would be the false Messiah who would be destroyed. And we see that the only two that are destroyed are the false prophet and the Antichrist. Think if we look carefully, as we could see that with these few pieces about these end-time players of the false prophet, the false Messiah, the Antichrist, and at the return of Christ, we can see that the false prophet will be the false Messiah. The false prophet will be Jewish. The Antichrist is not going to be Jewish. The Antichrist will come from the Middle Eastern nation, but he will be in league with the false prophet. Now that we are in the time of the end, it would be a good time to understand a few of the things that Bible prophecy tells us about the time of the end. Some people have gotten the mistaken impression that a lot of people are not going to be here. They're going to be raptured out of this world before the time of the end, and they don't need to study these things. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to be here? But that is not what the Bible says, so we should keep watch.